All right. All right, so welcome. Welcome to the Wellness Challenge 2022. We have 14 participants here joining us today at the Zoom meeting, the Lunch and Learn virtual Zoom meeting. And I hope day 2 is going well. I saw Anne drinking her water. We all have our water bottles beside us, doing what we can to get our points. We have a lot of familiar faces that are returning this year for our 10th annual Wellness Challenge. And we also have a lot of great new faces and groups too. So it's wonderful to have you all here today. And just a couple things I wanted to let you know. As you know, I always send the communication out to team captains. I don't know everyone that is in the Wellness Challenge. We have 33 teams, 255 participants this year. So that's a great number, very similar to last year. And what I'm going to do is sending emails. You can expect an email from me to team captain on Thursdays. So on a Thursday afternoon, I will send an email to the team captains, just giving a little bit of a regroup of how the first few days went and looking forward to the next week. There will always be a Zoom link that will help you get into the virtual Lunch and Learn on Tuesdays. They are scheduled for 12:15 to 12:45. I know some of you came in at 12, that's fine. I wasn't trying to be rude. I just wasn't letting everybody in at the very beginning so that the presenter and I have a few moments. Other than that, you can always reach out to your team captain or even directly to me if you have questions. I will do my best to clarify it. In my mind, the Wellness Challenge is very clear. I've been running it for 10 years. Doesn't mean it's clear for all of you guys. You can't always read my mind and what I'm thinking. So please don't hesitate to ask me any questions. About the recording, you can let your team know that they probably will not have this recording up by this afternoon. It will probably be tomorrow because I need my technical help to help me convert this into a YouTube so it can be available. So it'll be available by Wednesday, okay? Just to let them know that. All right, I think that's all of the kind of business I wanted to talk to at the beginning here. At this time, I'd like to take a moment to introduce our guest presenter, Krista Sawatsky. She's a registered dietitian from the Saskatchewan Health Authority, and she's going to be speaking on nutrition and water. So 2 of the components are going to be combined today. The idea is that she will speak and kind of present and share information with you for the first about 15 minutes. And then there is going to be time for discussion, questions, any of that. And if we wrap up before 12:45, that's okay too. So at this time, I am going to pass it over to Krista, and just a huge thank you, Krista, for coming out. You know, everybody knows that our Saskatchewan Health Authority are very, very busy during this pandemic. So I appreciate your time today coming here. So Krista, I will mute myself and pass it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Val. Can everybody hear me? Just somebody give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, perfect. I saw one. Thank you. Again, I just want to thank Val for inviting me to contribute to this year's Wellness Challenge, specifically the nutrition piece, and for inviting me today to come and talk to you guys about that. So I'm going to jump right in because I know it's a shortened time frame. Feel free to eat your lunch. Obviously, as a dietitian, I want to see everybody eating and not skipping the meal. So I'm going to jump right in, and I'm going to start with just talking a little bit about a healthy eating pattern. And so making healthy food choices with what we eat and what we drink on a regular basis is what helps us to develop a healthy eating pattern. And this can actually help improve our overall health as well. So with a healthy eating pattern, all of the foods and drinks that you consume, they work together to not only help you feel good, but they help you maintain your health. And of course, they help you meet your nutritional needs. So highly processed foods and drinks should be limited just simply because they're not part of a healthy eating pattern and they actually undermine it. So those type of foods are things like sugar drinks, like pop, juice, chocolate candies, fast food, frozen entrees or convenience items that you can purchase and just throw in the microwave or the oven, bakery products, processed meats, all those kind of foods. And these foods typically contain a lot of salt, sugar, and or saturated fat. And when we eat too much of those type of foods and get too much salt, sodium, sugar, fat, it can actually increase our risk of chronic disease. So if you are somebody that does, find that you consume a lot of highly processed foods, simply trying to take, the first step of maybe eating them a little bit less often, eating them in smaller amounts, or even trying to replace them with a healthier option. So healthy eating is a habit, and we can change and refine our habits, but that's not to say that it doesn't take a little bit of work. So regularly consuming vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and protein foods will help you develop a healthy eating pattern and therefore help you maintain your health. So that's kind of the basis of what we've set up, the points to help you do. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about each section. So vegetables and fruits, most people know these are great foods for you. They contain important nutrients like fiber, different vitamins and minerals, and they are an important part of a healthy eating pattern. So eating a variety of vegetables and fruits may actually lower your risk of heart disease. So these are just a few of the reasons that it's really important to make sure you're including plenty of them when you're having your meals and your snacks. And that's part of the reason why you'll notice you get points for half your plate to be vegetables and or fruit. You can try different textures, colors, shapes, cooking methods to fit your tastes and your preferences. And sometimes, I'm just going to stop. Can you guys just make sure you muted? I think someone was unmuted there. Perfect. Thank you. Sometimes, I don't know if everybody does this, but we kind of fall into the same habits, and we sometimes purchase the same vegetables and fruits that we're familiar with. And so a great way to incorporate new vegetables and fruits is to simply try, when you go to the grocery store for your weekly or however often you go for your grocery run, try to pick one new vegetable or fruit and do a little bit of reading, figure out, what kind of recipes you can use it in, try it raw, try it cooked, and maybe it's just a really easy way to start to incorporate and expand your repertoire of vegetables and fruits. And fresh, frozen, or canned can all be healthy options, given where we live and the fact that it's sometimes winter for 6 months out of the year. Fresh vegetables and fruits may not always be available depending on where you live. Sometimes they're crazy expensive. And even sometimes if they're reasonably priced and available, the quality isn't always the best depending on how far they've had to travel to get to us. So using a frozen or a canned vegetable or fruit is still a way that you can include them without breaking the bank. When you are picking a frozen vegetable or fruit, you want to just look for the ones that don't have any added sugar, seasonings, breadings, sauces, all the things that manufacturers like to add to them because they don't need it. The other thing is that, they're so versatile. You can throw them into soups and chilies or smoothies or wherever you feel like you want to add them to. And then they don't go bad. They have a much longer shelf life for sure. Canned vegetables, you want to look for the ones that have little to no added salt or sodium. If you can't find those because they're not available, you can just drain and rinse the ones that do have salt in them, and then that will help to lower the sodium content. And with the canned fruit, you just want to look for ones that don't have any sugar added, because fruit is naturally sweet enough so that we don't need the ones that they've added additional sugar to. There are lots of ways that you can eat more vegetables and fruits, but I'm not going to go over that. In the information packets that Val sent out to all the team captains, the piece on nutrition includes, different ways that you can start to incorporate more fruits and vegetables into your meals and snacks. So you guys can take a peek at that afterwards. The next piece that I wanted to talk about was just the whole grains. So whole grain foods are also an important part of a healthy eating pattern, and they also contain fiber, vitamins, and minerals. And the reason that whole grains are a healthier choice than, say, refined is simply because a whole grain includes literally all of the grain in the product. So because of that, they have more nutrients and more fiber than a refined grain where some of that grain has been removed and discarded. So fiber, you notice I mentioned, it's important for many reasons, but not only because it helps regulate bowels, helps to keep you feeling full, but it can also help lower your risk of things like stroke, colon cancer, heart disease, type 2 diabetes. And the type of foods that are whole grains include things like quinoa, whole barley, whole grain bread, whole grain pasta, whole oats or oatmeal, whole grain brown rice, or even wild rice. Whereas the refined products, you want to think of more of like the white products. So white bread, white pasta, white flour, white rice. And when you're picking your grain products, it's important to make sure that you're actually choosing a whole grain. And sometimes we think that a food, it looks like it's whole grain, maybe because it's dark in color, or you can see like all the little nuts or seeds or whatever, or it might be labeled as multigrain, 12 grain, organic, whatever the manufacturer has chosen to name it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually made with a whole grain. And so the easiest way to tell is simply to look at the ingredient list on a product. So on the ingredient list, in the first usually it's the first ingredient, maybe the second ingredient, it will literally have the words whole grain followed by the type of grain that product is. So for example, if you were looking for a whole grain bread and you weren't sure, if you looked on the ingredient list, it would say whole grain wheat flour, compared to say a white bread, which is just going to say wheat flour, or sometimes it might say enriched flour. So that's just a really easy way to look. There are also there's many whole wheat and multigrain foods that might not be a whole grain, but they can still be a healthy choice for you as long as they contain whole wheat flour. And that's just simply because they contain more fiber and more nutrients than, again, that refined grain, which has had most of that stripped away and discarded. So it's kind of like whole grain is like where you want to be, the gold standard, whole wheat, and then refined is at the bottom. In that nutrition packet, there's also some tips and suggestions on ways that you can increase your intake of whole grains as well. So whether that's, starting your day with a bowl of oatmeal, or, adding different, quinoa or barley into your soups or salads, or, even just something as simple as, instead of using white rice, maybe trying to do a brown rice or a wild rice. Sometimes people find that switch is a little bit hard, so you can even do half and half. So any change it can be a positive change. The next piece that I want to touch on is the protein foods. So protein foods provide you with important nutrients like protein, also as well vitamins and minerals, and they include animal and plant-based sources. So you don't actually need to eat a large amount of protein food to meet your nutritional needs, but you should have protein foods every single day. And ideally, if you can, making sure you have a protein source at each meal and preferably each snack. So animal-based protein foods include things like most of us would be familiar with: eggs, meat, poultry, fish, shellfish, dairy products. And when you're choosing these types of protein foods, you want to look for the leaner versions because they have less fat. So that might be leaner cuts of meat, like a round or a loin, looking for the skinless poultry versions, meat that's prepared without the added sauces or breading, thing like that. Fish would be, either fresh or frozen, as long as it doesn't have that added sauce. If you're looking for a canned version, trying again to just look for ones that aren't packed with extra salt. So looking for those no salt or sodium, no added sodium products, as well as, if you're looking for the frozen version, trying to avoid the ones that are already pre-battered and deep fried and that have added all that extra fat that we don't need. Dairy products, I did mention them, and sometimes people forget that these are a protein source. And so when you're choosing your dairy products, you just want to look for the unsweetened lower fat milk, yogurt, and cheese. Now, the plant-based proteins, most people have heard of this just because it's a really big trend right now in the industry. And so protein foods that come from plants provide more fiber and less saturated fat than other types of protein foods. And this is actually very beneficial for heart health. So whether you have heart issues or not, it's still beneficial to include these types of foods just simply because they do contain less fat and more fiber. So it includes foods like nuts, seeds. So it doesn't matter if that's peanuts, almonds, cashews, chia seeds, sunflower seeds, whatever it is, as well as things like beans, any kind of bean, whether you like black bean, kidney bean, pinto, the list is almost endless with beans, peas, so like chickpeas, for example, lentils, any color, as well as soybeans or soy products, including tofu and fortified soy beverages. So these are just some of the types of foods that you can use for a plant-based protein. And before I kind of give you a little tip on ways to increase it, I just want to do like a little caution that because it is such a big trend right now in the industry, I'm sure most of you have noticed, whether you're in the grocery store, at a restaurant, or on TV, every company and manufacturer seems to have a plant-based version of whatever their regular version is. So just know that something that's labeled as a plant-based or promoted as a plant-based whatever doesn't automatically make it a healthy choice. So some of the plant-based products that are out there are still severely processed. They've got lots of potentially added salt for sure in them. So you still want to be checking your nutrition label and not just defaulting to go, oh, it's plant-based, it's got to be healthy for me. The hope would be that it is, but it may have other things that are added that may make it not the best choice. And that's for like the pre-processed plant-based items that are out there. So at home, a great way to start incorporating some plant-based proteins is to simply try aiming for, say, one plant-based protein meal a week. And then you can work your way up to maybe a few meatless meals a week. And the goal here isn't to become meat-free. Like it's not saying meat is bad or anything like that. That's not the case. It's just simply trying to include these plant-based sources a little bit more frequently so that you can have the health benefits from including them. So even something like adding them into recipes that you potentially already make at home. If you make tacos, throw in black beans with your tacos when you're making the ground beef or ground turkey, whatever you use. Adds more fiber, boosts the protein. You get B vitamins, all these other things without the extra fat. So, if you're making chili, add extra beans. If you're making a sandwich, do something simple like use hummus, which is made from chickpeas, instead of maybe Miracle Whip. So there's lots of ways that you can start to incorporate plant-based proteins, and it doesn't actually take a lot of time. So definitely just try to think of different ways that you could maybe add it into what you're already having at home. It makes it a little less overwhelming. The next piece that I want to just touch base on is the mindful eating. So this could probably be a whole talk on its own, and there's lots of experts out there. This is not an area I specialize in, but it is important enough that I wanted to just touch briefly on it. So there are so many reasons that we eat. So we eat to nourish our bodies, to celebrate events, obviously to connect socially with our family and our friends. Sometimes we eat for emotional reasons. Sometimes we just simply eat without even thinking about the fact that we're eating because we're late for work or we're on a meeting or we're rushing the kids off to whatever event or practice that they have. So the concept of mindful eating is just simply being aware of your eating habits and taking the time to eat and noticing when you're actually hungry and when you're full. So when you're aware of your eating habits, you're able to identify how you eat. So, fast, alone, with others, whatever it may be. Why? Are you hungry? Are you full? What you're eating, when, where, and even how much. It also means that you actually use your senses and you're paying attention to the actual aroma or texture or flavor or taste of food. How many of us have ever, been so busy on the go that you eat something and 10 minutes later, you can hardly remember what you ate, let alone what it tasted like or if it was even good. We're all really good at not being mindful when we're eating, so it takes a little bit of time to start practicing this. And the whole reason that this is something we talk about is that when you're mindful with your eating habits, you can make healthier choices more often and it's easier to do it. And you can make positive changes to the routine eating behaviors that you have simply because you're more aware of what you're eating. So when you're more conscious of the food that you're eating and the eating habits you have this increased sense of awareness and you're able to actually identify the everyday decisions that you make around eating. So a great way to simply start doing this is minimizing distractions at meal times. So turning off the computer, TV, iPad, radio, phone, whatever it is, whatever electronic device, and putting it away so you can simply pay attention to what you're eating and you can start the practice of mindful eating. And that's why you gain points for trying to have at least one technology-free meal. I think it's per day, if I remember correctly. And so that's where that comes from, is that piece on mindful eating. Lastly, I just want to quickly touch on water. So there are so many drink choices out there, it's overwhelming. And many of those choices have extra calories, salt, sugar, fat, Lord knows what else added to them. And so the whole point of this is just simply make water your drink of choice instead. It's so important for your health. water is the best way to quench your thirst, and it's the best way to stay hydrated without extra calories, sugar, or whatever else all those other beverages have added to them. And our bodies actually lose water when we're sweating. So whether, it's hot outside when it's not winter and, or if we're exercising, even when we breathe, we lose water. When we get rid of waste, we lose water. And so we need to replace what is lost. And every person actually needs a different amount of water each day. But starting with kind of that 6 to 8 cups is a really good starting point for most adults. So that's why you're getting points for trying to get up to that 6 cups. Most of us don't drink enough. So I know Val mentioned it at the top that simply having something like a water bottle right beside you. Some people like the ones with lines, making it easy and accessible will really help so that you can get the water in a day. You can drink it hot, you can drink it cold, making a habit to always have a glass of water with your meals is also a great way to get it in. And definitely when you're being physically active, you want to have water as well. And that's kind of all I wanted to cover with the water piece. I do have a recipe booklet that Val is going to send out with the Thursday email. And so it just has just a few simple kind of recipe ideas to include. And I was trying to find a list of them. I know there's there's a smoothie recipe in there. There's a lentil pasta casserole. There's a stew in there. I can't remember. There's a few. And so you can expect to see that when Val sends out the email on Thursday as well, just to give you guys a few tips and suggestions. But there's tons of information out there. So you could always look for good recipes as well. And yeah, that's about it for me. I will open it up for questions. And I think you guys can unmute yourself. So if you have a question and you feel comfortable, just feel free to unmute yourself. Or I don't know, Val, if they can type it in the chat if it comes up. So whichever you guys prefer, because I know if you're not used to Zoom, sometimes talking is a little bit overwhelming. And if there's no questions, that's okay too. I'm just trying to see if I can see my whole screen here.
Yes, and you could put it in a chat there if you would prefer, or any questions, not only on what Krista has covered, but if there's any other kind of nutrition questions or things that you've wondered about this week or any time about different foods, that would be welcome at this time too.
Or I just spoke so fast that you guys haven't had time to process. No, I'm just kidding. All that information, there's really good tips in the package that Val sent out. So if there aren't any questions, that's okay too.
We'll give a minute or two. Sometimes
sure.
It takes a moment to. I had jotted down and then you answered it immediately, but I find the marketing very interesting because around that whole wheat, they love the marketing packages to put whole wheat. And until a few years ago, when I started to realize whole wheat and whole grain is not the same thing, there are not a lot of choices to do actually whole grain. When I started looking at bread, I went through a lot of packages till I finally found whole grain.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Val. Industry obviously is, their bottom dollar is kind of their concern for the most part in a lot of areas. So it is definitely harder to find some of the whole grain products. That's why, if you're a baker, props to you outside of the whole grain thing, because the one thing I've mastered is buns, but that's about it. But if you're able to bake, you can purchase whole grain flour and then do it on your own. So sometimes when you're looking for products and you can't find it, if you have that talent or you have the interest even, then definitely feel free. You can always you can buy multigrain flour, you can buy whole grain flour. Some people, I've met a lady who gets it from the farm and grinds it, which I was floored by. So I know that's how it was done at one point, but definitely not something we're as used to. So I think I see some.
Yeah, there's a question if you could touch on quinoa.
Okay. Do you want to just in terms of what it is or how to use it or ideas? Quinoa is a whole grain. You can use it really in place of any other grain that you like. Well, the health benefits would be, Yeah, that's what he said. Sorry, I
Mhm.
have to look to my other
I
screen
know
to
it's
be
a
able
little
to
tough.
see questions. So I mean, it would have all the same benefits as a whole grain. So I mean, for sure that fiber piece, as well as quinoa has the added kind of benefit of it also has some protein component to it. So it's kind of like I don't want to say the best bang for your buck because that's not necessarily true, but you're going to get the fiber component, you're going to get the B vitamins. So it's not that you would only like quinoa isn't necessarily better than all the other grains, but that's why having a variety is going to give you your most benefit because there isn't one food, there's not one whole grain that meets the gamut of everything. And that's the only food that you should be eating all the time. But quinoa is an excellent one that's really high in fiber, low in saturated fat. It's got those B vitamins. It has the added benefit of protein as well, like a higher protein content than some of the other whole grains. So sometimes people like that. Just simply like if you're making something like an energy bowl, because then you don't need to add really a lot of other protein sources. Like, sometimes you just add a little bit of beans into it and it's a lot easier to get a good amount of protein in that meal when you're using quinoa. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, I think that was, yeah.
Okay.
Anybody, go ahead.
Krista, this is Kevin Snyder calling. And I had a question in regards to, could you say something about even just serving sizes? That is probably one of the struggles that I have the most is what I think I need versus what I really need.
Yes. I thank you, Kevin, for bringing that up because I feel like that's a question that a lot of people have. And I think it comes from because our previous food guide was very specific, right? If anybody is familiar with the old food guide, it had very specific, this is a serving size, half a cup of this, one slice of this. And with the transition to the new one, we use more of the plate for a guide. And again, guide is key because every person needs a different amount. And this is where that mindful eating piece can really become helpful because so many of us don't even realize that we're not actually paying attention to what we're eating. And I'm guilty of this too. When the day is busy, sometimes we can, I'll spend 45 minutes making a meal and we can eat it in 10 minutes. And it's, when we eat really fast, our mind and our stomach don't have time to catch up. So sometimes we end up eating more because we don't realize actually that our body is full because we've eaten it so fast. So using that plate where half of your plate is a vegetable or fruit, about a quarter, which roughly, depending on the size of your hands, is about the size of a fist, a quarter from the whole grains and then a quarter from the protein is what is representative of balance right now. So instead of worrying about whether or not, oh, did I get 6 servings of fruit or this many servings of grains, using that idea of the plate at each meal that you plan out, make sure you have fruit or vegetables or both, whole grains, or if you can't find whole grain, whole wheat at least, and then a protein source at every meal. Start with that and slow down your eating, and that will help with the portion control piece of it rather than measuring out and being concerned about the exact amount. Does that help, Kevin?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. I know it's a little bit simple, but that's kind of the intention, is that we're so focused, life is busy enough and we get so focused on all the little details. And really, if we just break it down into like a simple format of just trying to have balance at each meal that we have. And even I see a snack came in, or pardon me, a question about snacks in the food guide. Again, same thing. You don't have to have there's not one perfect size of plate, right? So you base it on your own individual needs. But when you're having a snack, try to plan to have, 2 items if you're able to, but you don't have to have like all 3. If it's a snack that you're like, I'm not as hungry as I want to be, maybe you simply just have an apple with some peanut butter, or maybe you have some carrots and celery with hummus. I personally, as a dietitian, think it's important to have a little bit of protein, because typically if we're snacking between meals, it's a sign that we maybe need some of that fuel source. And protein and fiber together help you feel full and they keep you going throughout your day. So I think it's a good idea to add a little bit of protein if you're able to, or at least an item that has fiber. Otherwise, we just end up snacking on things and we don't feel satisfied, and then we really eat more of them. Looking to see if there's any You're welcome. If somebody has asked a question or typed it in and we've missed it, just retype it. We do a lot of these web version meetings and it's sometimes really easy to miss.
I think right now we have got all the questions that were in the chat.
Okay.
I don't know if this is and you may all be familiar with, but anyways, the front of the Canadian Food Guide is exactly the plate that Krista was talking about. And so it is in the education system now. And so the kids are starting to learn it a little differently than how we did with servings. And it's the idea of the plates. So I'm sure, you know what, I could also attach the new Canadian Food Guide that has that actual visual. Sometimes that helps to challenge ourselves to new foods.
Yeah, and actually, Val, the recipe booklet that I'm gonna send to Val for her to send out, it's based off the food guide because sometimes people think they see the plate and they think of it too literally, like, okay, I've got to separate it out. So then when you have a mixed meal, like a smoothie or a casserole, people really struggle, like, well, how do I know if that's half? And so the recipes I'm sending out are all that front of the food guide is right in there, Val. So, I mean, you're welcome to do the separate food guide as well, but that is in there. So you guys will be able to see the picture. And if you go to the Government of Canada website, they actually have little videos that are perfect examples of how you can still use that concept of balance when you're making a snack, when you're making a breakfast, because not often, but like sometimes breakfasts are smaller than our other meals. Just depends on your own family environment and everything. And so they've got little videos that show you to kind of help you with that concept, moving away from specific servings and thinking more of like, okay, how do I balance and how do I, take that idea, but then have it in a mixed meal, like a smoothie or a casserole or a sandwich or something like that.
Right, that sounds awesome. Well, I do want to be respectful of time. Many of you have work and places and things to do. So that does bring us just past 1:45. A huge thank you, Krista, for covering a lot of, and like you said, some of it is common sense, some of it we've heard before, but it's such great reminders to ourselves. Eating is such a huge part of our world and our life, and just that we can be more mindful and making small changes. It's not huge changes, but it's small changes so we can enjoy the meals that we are cooking every day. So I look forward to those recipes. Like I said, again, you can always expect Thursday, your team captains will get the email. I have no control over when your team captains will send it on to you. All I have control of is the fact I will send the email on a Thursday. And I will have those recipes. Just a reminder, if you came in a little bit late, yes, this has been recorded, and yes, you will, those who are not available right now will have an opportunity to watch it. Probably not today though, just because I need a little bit of technical help to get it ready for tomorrow. But it will be the location that I gave you in the last email, and I'll remind you again on Thursday. So with that, good luck, everybody. Enjoy your water, enjoy your healthy recipes, and whatever physical activity. The challenge this week is to try a new exercise. So I look forward to if anybody wants to share what their new exercises are. And also a huge thank you, Krista, for being here with us today. And thank you to you and all the healthcare workers for all of the tremendous work you're doing in this difficult time. Thank you, everybody. Good luck to your teams. Have fun.